All right, so this week I wanted to talk about, because it's going to lead us into why this call comes together on Sundays, and we come together to discuss a lot of different topics and, our history and where we're going and our spirituality and solutions to the issues that are going on in the world, insights and different perspectives and all sorts of things, and we know that. But ultimately, the goal of this group and hopefully each individual on this planet is to begin to work towards creating the new dream, the dream of the new earth, or a world in which we would like to be participants of, since this one is obviously not working for some of us. So in order to create the new dream, we got to really focus on spending time figuring out and knowing, which really means remembering who we truly are. Okay, can everybody go to mute? So when we're born into these bodies, these avatars, we have I don't know if it's a curse or if it's a blessing, but we do go to sleep. And to some degree or another, some of us completely go to sleep, and it takes so much energy for those beings to move into being human and learning how to be human and learning how to walk with a new avatar in this world, this lower frequency vibration. And others don't fully go to sleep. So it's all in these different layers and levels. Nobody's better than anybody else. It's just how it works out. And we're just trying to navigate these avatars. So to some degree, we have to go to sleep. We have to just figure out how to walk and how to talk and how to eat and how to do all sorts of things, put on our clothes, use zippers, use buttons, that sort of stuff. You know, it's just what is being in a body require. And then you have that fundamental layer that we come in with to have to cope with and deal with. And then you have the outer layer, which is the frequency that we're operating in, which is to keep us in slumber, to keep us sleepwalking, to not allow us to have any knowledge of who we are, what this plane of existence is. Is it round? Is it flat? Is it square? Is it rectangle? You know, our thoughts dominated by trying to navigate through all the layers of labels that we, identify ourselves, starting with our names and then our families and our ages and our skin color and our religions and our education and our economics. I mean, it's just layered upon layered upon layered of all these labels that help to host identity, but the identity is born out of this ego system that is very divisive and very disruptive to who we are, essentially, and the harmony and the equilibrium that comes with being present and in full-scale witness of who we are. So I want to talk just a little bit about what's going on with this plane of existence, because really this world, we talk about it as being a planetary system, and we argue perpetually about the shape of it, and to a degree that matters, but ultimately this is just a plane. It's a realm in which we live in, and in this realm, in order to know who you are, you have to understand what's at play. So last week we talked about King John III, which brought us into the Christ, which brought us into understanding a little bit, just a little touch on the satanic Luciferian war, actually, that's going on, the two different factions. But I want to go a little bit deeper than that and shorter than that. So what I want to talk about are the three gods. So the three gods of this plane of existence is the first god is Satan. Okay? So Satan is the god of darkness and is a false god. And that is the god that pretty much rules this world. Okay? Lucifer is the other god and is the god of light. And it also is a false god. And Lucifer, the god of light, is now in movement to take over as a second beast system. It's a system to rule this plane of existence. Okay? Now, the reality is that prior to going fully to sleep as a collective consciousness, where church has come in and designed for us a very tightly woven fabric of deception, hiding the true God from us. Because if we, as human beings, knew who the true God was, we would be able to completely navigate this realm quite well, and we'd be able to escape this realm, which this realm at this point in history has become quite diabolically evil, right, at this time, okay, under perception, or the perception of all that's rolling in at us. So we know it's in operation. You know, whether we want to declare it, we're not getting into that. We're just looking at things as they are. So that's what is happening in this realm. And this realm was not always it was of matter, it was of density, but it was not always of a sense of evil or an energetic frequency of diabolical evil. But this is the material world. And in the material world, it is cohabitated both by the God of darkness and the God of light. Now, the church hides this truth because, again, it wants to disempower us. It wants us to disengage from our own sense of power and our own knowledge of freedom. It wants us to be bound into limitation. It holds us captive to these two false gods of Lucifer and of Satan. But the true God and the most powerful God, the third God, which would ultimately indicate the Trinity, right? The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Well, it isn't exactly that. What the true Trinity is the God of light, the God of dark, and the God of you. And that we are, you and I, and all of us, true humans, are the true and powerful God of I, right? We see the symbol everywhere, right? They hold a hand over the left eye, or you see the one eye symbol on the pyramid on the dollar bill, and so on and so forth, right? You're seeing the eye all over the place. Well, they're not letting us know because they use that as a Masonic, dark, occult symbol, but it is the eye, the one eye that is us, who are the true gods. Okay? And before you hang up the phone, just bear with me for a moment, okay? Now, as I said, we each have forgotten this truth, the truth of who we are, but also the truth of who we came to be. And I'd like to just take a moment just to remind each of us that when we see our children or our grandchildren or babies if we don't have children, and we look at our children, they don't have, their simplicity is so present and available. Their innocence and their trust in themselves. It's not the trust in us so much, it's their trust in themselves. Because as infants and as babies, they don't have all the labels, they don't have all the layers, they don't have all the ego to create division and separatism. And they understand who they are in their godhood. And it's just as time comes over, as they separate more from the spirit realm, moving deeper into matter. Could you handle that for me, please? Because she's not going to stop. They separate, as they come into matter, they begin to separate off from their spirit self, and therefore they start to deny over all the indoctrination and conditioning who they truly are. Now, the Christian Gnostics, they once knew and recorded this truth, but they were persecuted as heretics and as speaking blasphemous. And all their records or their books, all of them were banned from the Bible because the Bible is satanic, and it truly is. It's written from the satanic gods. Okay? Gnostic means knowledge, and Gnostics were dedicated to searching for enlightenment. And as we know, the word enlightenment means enlight, I am meant, right? But they were in search of enlightenment. But they are also in search of the secrets and the hidden wisdoms, which is of the darkness, all right? So they were searching for both the light and dark within themselves. And this threatened the power of the church. The church was developed primarily by Constantine, but the Roman Empire, in order to control the people, okay? So when Constantine was emperor, he just made Christianity the official religion. That's why it mushroomed and bloomed into what it is now, which is a massive religious movement. But the Gnostics, though they were Christian, every bit of their knowledge was outlawed because all of their knowledge could liberate the people. So let's just take a look at what Satanism and Luciferianism really stands for. Because the truth of the matter is, where Lucifer, God of light, and Satan, God of dark, what they represent, truly, shockingly, is the yin-yang sign. It is the sign of opposition or opposites. They are fundamentally the opposites of one another. So Satan, who created religion and who created and wrote the Bible itself, represents and stands for darkness, selfishness, individualism, and dominance over all things and beings. And Lucifer is of the light and represents altruism, the collective, and equality. Okay? So I always thought when I was hearing all the stories and temple, and Abraham, was asked to go and sacrifice his only son, and I'm thinking, what kind of God would ask, Abraham, or what kind of God would flood out the world and tell Noah to build an ark, and who sacrifices virgins, and who has blood sacrifices, and who goes and kills all the firstborn sons of the people? It's not a loving God. It's not a loving being. It has to be of a darkness, of a satanic energy. And so you see that strewn throughout the entire Bible. So, anyways, now when we look at Lucifer and Satan, God of light and God of dark, we are really looking at archetypes, the archetype of the light side and of the dark side of the dual equation that is found in this plane of existence. And when you're looking at archetypes, it isn't just that those archetypes live outside of us, but they live inside of us as well. The archetypes of light and dark both exist within us, in our personality structures, in our characters, in our behaviors, in our thoughts, but most predominantly, those archetypes exist within our subconscious selves. So when we look at things like we support and live within a world of capitalism, capitalism is based on individualism, and that is satanic. We also live in a world of socialism. People say it's democracy, but it's not. It's socialism. And socialism is built on collectivism or Luciferianism. Okay, so whatever is happening and what exists within the world outside of us and the external coexist with what lives within the world of our internal thought processes, emotionality, but predominantly of our subconscious and conscious experiences and choices. Now, us being the third God, what the ultimate God or the third God or the most powerful God is called the Abraxas. That is the one true God. It is the ultimate power and the synthesis of all opposites. Abraxas is both Satan and Lucifer combined, and yet it is higher than both Satan and Lucifer, or light and dark. Abraxas is beyond all things. It is considered the absolute. It goes beyond good and evil. It goes beyond all dualities because it is all that it is, and it is all that it is not. Now, Lucifer, in its own right, based on being the morning star or the keeper of light, speaks of life. Satan, the prince of darkness, speaks of death. But Abraxas speaks of life and death at the same time, right? So how many of us, and we don't get off the phone to answer it yet, but how many of us have felt like we are living and experiencing life in a dream state, and yet we feel awake? We're awake, but we feel like we're dreaming. How many times have, at times where maybe you're in grief or something tragic has happened and you feel like you're alive, but you also feel dead inside? Or you feel alive and you feel dead, but it's so poignant that you feel even more connected. Abraxas is the truth and it is the lie. It is the good and it is the evil. It is the life and it is the death. And it's all conjoined into one breath. It's conjoined into one word. And with the word and with the breath, the world was created. But it takes all of that duality, and it moves it, the Abraxas moves it higher than all of that, because the Abraxas is the synthesis of all things. It is the superhuman. Like we have individual personal computers inside of our homes, and yet there is a supercomputer that runs very efficiently to run all of our personal computers off of it. Abraxas is our superhuman, and we are the, not lesser, just parts of the superhuman born into a physical body experience. So this Abraxas is beyond all concepts of good and evil, even though it incorporates both good and evil. And the truth is, we are the Abraxas because we contain all of this within us. So essentially, we are the creator of this world. The truth is, the material world is an illusion. The Gnostics, they knew this. They knew that this world is an illusion. Many of us, when we were children, I'll go back to, sometimes would say, or even as adults would say, that we felt like we were operating through a dream, that this didn't make sense. You hear a lot of truthers say, I feel like I'm living in a hologram. Others will say, I feel like I'm living in a simulation, right? Because the reality is that we truly are not a body at all. We are presenting ourselves in the body in this illusionary world, right? That's what's happening. So on one level, this is a reality. We can feel our body, and we experience pain, and we experience pleasure. We live in a world where we feed ourselves from it, and we tend to it, we love it, we're afraid of it, and we have all sorts of life experiences within this world. However, it still ultimately is an illusion, because we are an eternal mind. And that eternal mind is called a monad. And a monad is an eternal system of mathematical frequency patterns. Each one of us is an eternal monad, and our bodies are simply avatars that allow us to explore this material world, to operate in this plane of existence, to navigate this realm in which we are coexisting within. And this world is called a holos. Okay? Before space and time happened, before the Big Bang occurred, we existed in, and I quote, a place, because we don't really have words for non-space yet. But it is a non-space, and it's called the source. We lived, we existed inside of the source itself before the Big Bang, before the source, who is perfection, completely shattered, creating this material world and other worlds that are of higher and lower frequencies, or, as we would say, other dimensions. But the material world is a shared mathematical dream shared by the monadic collective, the collective of all minds. And that means that every human on this planet is navigating through, we are all monadic, we are all monads, and we are collectively creating a mathematical frequency that is creating the reality in which we live in presently. So if the darkness and the light both coexist, the yin and the yang both coexist within us, and yet we are the higher frequency that can rise and elevate above both light and dark to integrate duality and rise higher until that we are literally incorporating all that is and all that is not, merging back into the Abraxas, the ultimate, the most absolute Abraxas of all, then we can honestly say that the reality in which we're living in, that is of this lower vibrational frequency, this diabolical evil that has been taking over us, can change. It can be altered, right? So when we look at, and maybe if you all read my articles, you see that I continue to go back to the idea that if we must have knowledge of what's going on around us, because when we look at what's going on around us, we can actually see what is going on within us. And then we can say, well, I don't want this vaccine, or I don't want Bill Gates, or I don't want these riots, and I don't want, we can look at all these things and go, but I don't want any of that, so how am I helping to co-create that? Well, here's the thing. If there are, and I don't necessarily believe in the numbers that they put out there, but let's just say just say we're 7 billion people. That's what they say. That's what we are. Okay. So if you take 7 billion true humans, let's say, and you break that in, that goes in half. So that's 3.5 billion people, 3.5 billion people that still remain with our souls somewhat intact, somewhat connected to our bodies and our frequencies, our avatars. So 3.5 billion people, the other are awash because they've lost their souls to whatever engagements and decisions that they've made. Okay. So you take 3.5 that are watching the game and 3.5 that believe and are operating inside of the game. They're creating the game. We are observing the game. But are we just observers of the game, or are we playing within the game? And so I would say that out of the 3.5 billion people, 98%, if not more, play inside the game, right? Because we're believing in the game. We're frightened of it. We have anxiety because of it. We are depressed because of it. We're angry because of it. We feel hopeless. We feel powerless. We feel bored. We feel miserable, whatever it is. Or we're compliant to the game. Or we're rising up and saying we're leaving the game, but we are, in fact, discussing the game. And it's a fine line that we have to walk, because we need to know what the game is so that we can disengage from it and not participate in it. So on one side, you got to have a mind to it, and the other side, it's like you leave the mind of that game, because the mind is creating the game. So you have the light and dark that live inside of you and me, all of us, and it's a matter of choosing what part of ourselves are we accessing. Are we accessing our darkness and raging and angry and depressed and hopeless and despairing? Are we grief-stricken? Are we remaining lost? Are we focused only on that which is of the darkness here in the world, the satanic vibration? Or are we focused only on the light? And the light would look like, in this world of humans, our consciousness, to always be positive, to always be thinking of, life and the higher constructs and, the new age thought process, that we can only be positive and we can create only through positivity. That also is so false. It's that false illusion that everything is to be positive, or we're focused only on the negative, so that's the darkness. It's to be all of it. It's to have our attention knowing that that is there, and then we are here, and how are we going to be of this, or are we going to rise above this and be the observer? Be a non-participant. Move out of complicity, because we are in complicity, right? And it's always so easy to move back into complicity at some point in a certain moment, because we're surrounded by our families and our friends, our neighborhoods, our communities, our world, that continues to draw our attention back into that which is going on, that is of a frequency that I'm hoping none of us want to continue to experience. So on one level, it's a dance, right? It's a complex dance of, I know this and I move beyond it. I know this is a concept, and I move beyond it. I encompass it all, it's all a part of it, and yet I am not of it. I am the witness. I am the observer, but I'm not of it. And when you're living in a realm that is all about it, it's hard not to be of it. So there is a complexity. And then there is a simplicity of when we come to a place within ourselves to be able to draw back and totally disengage from all of it, to stand apart from it, yet not fully disengaged, because if we fully disengaged, then we would die or we would float away. We're not ready to do that, but that we remain in a detached state of mind, so therefore, and deciding that we would like to create something new and of a different vibrational frequency. So that's what I want to go into today and talk about, is that I see with a lot of truthers that are more spiritually minded, walking around the posts that people are putting out there, that are saying, okay, this is what's going on, this is a situation, let's take a look at it, and then they'll go, not on my timeline, in this hollowed out perception that if I say it's not on my timeline, it's magically not going to exist. That's not exactly how it works. You got to do something more than just throw it off casually. You've got to actually employ a little bit of action. And action would start with thought. Thought would come from mind. Mind would move to heart. Heart will cultivate it with mind. Spirit would come in and put all the frosting on it. And then we would activate it through our actions. And so what's happening in order to, this complicity, in order to keep this world functioning through the satanic Luciferian diabolical opposition of forces, right? It's forces. It's one side fighting the other side to gain dominance, to gain awareness, to gain, to hold on to humanity as prisoners, right? To hold us locked into this imprisoned state. They don't want us to know that we're gods. They don't want us to know that we can elevate. We can elevate and rise. And elevate means to actually move within oneself, to rise within oneself, to rise within one's consciousness, and to birth new realities. If the collective mind, as I stated earlier, all the monads came together and created this world, then we could easily create another world. So it's about coming together in a collective mind, yet again, and deciding together, designing it. What is it that we want of a new world? Different possibilities. We certainly know by living within this one what we do not want. And we're always declaring. I tell people all the time, don't tell me what you don't want. That's why I even say with the calls, don't tell me in the group why you're not coming. Tell me why you are coming. I'm like that with everything. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you love. Tell me what you feel. But don't tell me what you don't want, because then you're creating more of that, right? So we know what we do not want. We don't even have to discuss what we don't want. We just need to start declaring together, creating a one-mind force. That does not mean immersing ourselves inside of each other so that we don't exist. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about balancing individualism with collectivism, creating together in a partnership, in a cohesive partnership, what we want from our new world, our new earth, whatever you want to call it. Because if we don't start creating the new dream, this is the one we're going to end on. This is going to be our exclamation point. When Nibiru passes over and passes through, and all the poles and all the things and whatever the hell it's, going to happen, and it all explodes, and all these guys are trying to get out, and they're all in tunnels and all these things. Right, I'm not going into this phone call. But the great dismantling is happening. And the cool thing about it, right, we talked about Greg Braden and Jose Aguirres, and people in the 1990s were talking about how we were going to reach 0 point on December 21st in 2012, correct? And the reality is that we are at 0 point now. And it's amazing thing that we can be at. It's an amazingly powerful and poignant time. It's when everything is coming to a close and all new beginnings can happen. But when things come to a close, like in the I Ching, the final books, it's all about, you've got books of chaos, you've got books of dismantling, you've got all these breakdowns in order to have breakthroughs. You've got to dismantle the old. The snake does not just grow unless it sheds its skin. A caterpillar does not become a butterfly unless it sheds its cocoon. We are in a time right now where we are dismantling the old first beast system, which is the satanic system that has held us locked into prison. The Luciferian system is really trying to take hold. The Luciferian system governs the AI technology. It governs robotics. It governs transhumanism. It governs the space force. It governs all the 5G systems and the Wi-Fi and all the things that are coming in, the chemtrails, all of it. that is the Luciferian system that is taking hold and trying to get their feet solidly on the ground. The satanic system isn't going to go away. It's just going to integrate inside of the Luciferian system. Because, again, it's opposites, but everything is one in and of itself. You can't have yin if you don't have yang. So it's not going to disappear. It's just going to be integrated the way the Luciferian system was integrated into the satanic system. Tracy, you were sleeping and snoring. Okay, so we're at 0 point. And because we're at 0 point, we have this phenomenal opportunity to create the new dream. And again, I'll go back to when you were a child, didn't you feel like you were in a dream state oftentimes, and you just like deja vus and unaware and trying to get the vibration, the frequency, you felt like you were doing something, you did this and at another time, another space, or you're doing this right now in a different dimension or in a different timeline? Well, okay, so here's the thing. We're living in an illusion. We're living in a dream. And this dream's coming to an end. A new dream's trying to be born. And we, as the Abraxas, as strands or spokes of the absolute, omnipotent, powerful source, Abraxas, we are born from, we stay and remain connected to, we have the opportunity now to end our enslavement by birthing a new world. Okay? We can change the dream. We can upgrade our hologram. We can create a new simulation, whatever anybody wants to call it, based on whatever thoughts a person has on this. But we are now able to shed the old. Now, I find it interesting in all of the advertisements having to do with the corona COVID that we are in a new normal. But if you engage in any part of their new normal, we are going to be even more enslaved. But they are, in every kind of way, they're trying so desperately hard to brainwash us into believing that our new normal is to be silenced, is to be censored, is to walk separately, is to disown and abandon connection, is to move away from our fundamental inherent needs that we have as human avatars. And we just need to just not focus on that and start focusing on what we want. And honestly, let me say this. In our old normal, which was very, very abnormal and dysfunctional as it was, though we had more connection, though we seemed to have a little bit more power and a little bit more mobility in our connections, we've been pretty fucked up, right? Relationships are pretty fucked up. And a lot of times people say, well, hey, I'll get married, but if it doesn't work, I'll get divorced. Our minds are really entrenched in some very dysfunctional thinking and operations because we're operating well out of ego, right? Ego is not soul, and ego is not source. It is personality. And it's and the way ego is operating now through the majority of people, it is very dysfunctional, it's very problematic, and it's totally getting in our way of being able to be mindful, allowing our souls to move forward and forth into our conscious awareness, where we are literally operating out of soul source frequency and energy. You know, and I'm not talking about la-la land. I'm talking about a very grounded ability to perceive in a very cohesive, aligned, and loving state, peaceful state, harmonious state of perception, and also by being able to disengage whatever it takes in our shadow work to be able to just, instead of processing so heavily, because we're taught everything's hard work, everything's labor, everything's a process. On a certain level it is. But we make it an arduous task to just let shit go, right? Let it go. Let trauma go. It happened. Write down what you learned from it. Let it speak to you what you learned from it, and let it go. Empty it out. Diffuse it. Because those traumas and our wounds, and it's historical and it's generational, is binding us to an ego, and our egos are so vastly out of control. I see it every day on almost every post that I put up. These people just suffering in their egos and misaligned to all the things that should never be a priority. And so if we can move to disengage from ego, that's just personality, which deprives us from building character and value systems and principles in which we choose to stand by. And it disallows us from allowing our souls and our higher frequency to move in, because the reality is that we are free. We never were not free. We were always free, right? Like, for instance, I saw on America's Got Talent, when I stopped looking at everybody's throat to see what Adam's apple was coming out of what woman's neck, I was watching this guy. Of course, it was a black man, and he was jailed for, 37 years for raping and killing a white woman, right? Can only be this way in this world. And they said to him, and he got out, finally was able to get somebody to prove that he never committed that crime, and he got freed. And so the judges asked him, well, how did you survive that? And he said, they jailed my body. They just didn't jail my mind. My mind was always free. And he was right. Absolutely correct. We have always been free. I can have a litter of puppies. If I have a litter of 8 puppies and I take 4 puppies and I put them in a yard, and I keep them in a yard for 6 months, and the other 4 puppies run free. When I open up the door to the yard after 6 months, those 4 puppies will never see the door open. They'll always see themselves locked inside that yard. Their minds have them locked in. They are no longer free. It takes incredible amounts of encouragement to lure anybody outside of the cell that the minds have captured us in, right? It takes incredible amounts. So the reality is, when we can understand just clearly, you don't have to see it, you just have to understand that the reality is we are free. We've always been free. Nothing can change that. They can come and take us and put us in a FEMA camp. They can come and take us and put us in a jail cell. They can do all sorts of things, but as long as we don't acknowledge that we are in prison, as long as we acknowledge only that we are free, as long as our minds remain free, our thoughts remain free, our hearts remain free, we are free. So we have to know that. And we don't have to abide by any of their laws, because their maritime laws, which is of the satanic system, are bullshit laws. They don't exist because they don't fall under natural laws. They don't deal with common law. They don't deal with universal law. They do deal with common law, but they don't deal with natural law, and they don't deal with universal law. They're of their own law, which is a law against humanity, all laws against true humanity. Now we're moving into constitutional law, which on a Luciferian system, which seems, oh, that sounds great, doesn't it? Which would be land law, but again, it's laws to bind us, laws to imprison us. But the reality is that because we are abraxas, because we are sentient, because we are free. All right? So under Roman law, or the Vatican, or the satanic ruler, they feel that they give us life, and they can decide whether we die or not. You know, they allow us life. even under their understanding and appreciation of how things work, because they have a greater knowledge than we do, as Abraxas, the ultimate absolute omnipotent Abraxas, the ultimate one, states that they have given, or it has given us existence. Therefore, we exist. When we die, we can return back to that which is the ultimate one, right? We return back to our soul, and fully, completely, without our avatars. So they understand this. Roman leadership understands that it may allow us to have life. It may determine that we are to suffer death. However, existence can only be given by the one and only. And so when we know that, we know they're full of shit, number one, and yeah, somebody can take a gun and shoot us, and then we die, but we're still free. We're free because our minds are free, if we choose it. We're free because our souls are free, period, end of story. We're free by our own determination, and therefore we are. If we believe that we're not, then we are not free. We are the caged puppies who don't know that the door is open. That is the majority of the world. The majority of the world doesn't see that we are the creators, and the majority of the world doesn't see we're at 0 point, and the majority of the world doesn't see that we can come together and create something new and vibrant based on all that we desire and yearn for. What our souls know we can have, that we can create. And I will tell you this, my friends on the phone, you are a very odd allotment to people because you actually get on a phone. You actually pick up the phone and dial it. You take action, which makes you different than the majority of the people, because as many people know, especially Alex, who's on this call, knows how long I've been doing this for and how many people have a million excuses why they can't make a phone call. And it's ridiculous. Because the moment that we begin to connect and gather with each other, we are right now beginning to create a new, vibrant world. We did it last week. We do it every time we get on the call, right? And we will continue to do so if the calls continue to exist. So therefore, if all of us were to come together and more people were to join in and more people were to come together, even if they created from just texting or whatever, we could create something that is vibrant. That's why they put the mask on us. We've been muzzled, people. We've been muzzled. And why they have the 6-foot distancing, and why you can't leave your house, but then you can leave your house to go riot, and all this crazy shit that's going on. They're doing everything to distract us from having the conversation. And the conversation is, would you like to create a new world? And if so, what would you like in it? We're at 0 point. We can do everything that we want to do. We are free. We are free. We are free, and we are free. And by the way, before I end this, I want you all to know that we are free. So many times I'll ask people, what are your life skills? What are your talents? What are your gifts? All three of those things are different. And then what are your spiritual skills? What are your spiritual talents? And what are your spiritual gifts? Because right now, it is fundamental to grab pieces of paper, one piece of paper, and have it out, and you write it down. We got to start focusing not what is our weakness or how we're not comparing to somebody else. We must absolutely focus our attention not on ego, but on knowledge. What are our skills, talents, and gifts spiritually and through being a human being? When we focus on that, we automatically send energy to it and we cultivate it. I can tell you that everybody on this call is hiding something from themselves, let alone from each other. How many people just step out and have the conversation? My spiritual gift is that I can create some alchemy, and this is how I can do it, right? I know for me, that if anybody that's not of indigenous skin color says I'm a shaman, I go, yeah, right my ass, you know. But I'm full of shit because the reality doesn't matter. There are people who have certain fundamental spiritual skills that create different energetic patterns to bring forward into this world, no matter what you look like, your gender is, and your age. Doesn't really matter. So we're here together to understand what the earth herself is, and we're here to understand who we are in this plane of existence. We're here to cultivate it. We're here to acknowledge it, not pump through ego, but just through this is information. We are more than we say we are, and we're more than we know we are. And so this is the trajectory that I want to go in, and I want to discuss from each of us, you know, what is it that our skills are? What is it? Who are we? Do you see yourself as a God? Do you have knowledge and awareness of the energy frequency that you're bringing forward? And would you like to create a new world? And the interesting thing is we could, and this planet could easily, in her own right, just begin to shed herself like a butterfly and leave this one world here and take on a new mathematical frequency of a new world. She can do that, and we can do that with her. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to close this part of the call, recorded, and then let's go off, and in 30 seconds to 1 minute, let's just come back to call, and then we'll begin. We'll begin our discussion. Thank you. Otherwise, I wouldn't ask us to do that, but we have to disconnect in order to save the recording and not record our voices. Okay. Bye.